Good morning, everybody. Today is the 29th day in the month of March 2022. I'm Mr. Hot Forex. And quickly, as usual, check through the markets, find out what the overall sentiment is in the market, if the opportunities, and then how we can take advantage of it. But please remember that this is just a communication material, and nothing in this communication should be considered as investment advice or investment recommendation. Users acknowledge that investment in FX and CFD products is characterized by a certain degree of uncertainty, and that any investment of this nature involves a high level of risk for which users are responsible and liable. What we have this morning in terms of the overall environment is a slight tilt towards the positive side. While across board, we've had equities also trading in positive region generally. And I had this written out earlier. I said a better risk environment to start the day as equities trade in a positive region, right? The VIX pushes lower alongside the bonds as well, right? You look at overall, you have that more positive tilt. And what has been the reason for this? Well, first of all, we've had, Turkey president, right, where the said talk to Russia and Ukraine taking place, saying that there's significant progress expected from the talk to Russia and Ukraine, right? One, you also hear Russia saying they're also easing their stance, right, against Ukraine joining the EU, even though that military alliance would not be there. But I mean, that's just a little bit of ease, right, from that side. And we're also having Ukraine talking about agreeing to be a neutral state. So all of those little concessions here and there also makes the talk flow easier and it makes it even better for progress to be made. In the FX space, we have the Japanese yen also doing better in today's session, right? Stronger in this session, but not because we've had a really big change in terms of the drivers for Japanese yen in recent time. Not really. Here we have profit taking. We're also heading into fiscal year end for Japanese economy as well, ends end of this month. So there's also that, profit taking is also going to be there, flows back into the country as well will also be there as well. Apart from that, we've had, here and there interventions talk from the BOJ around officials there. So there's also that to pay attention to as well. But generally, I feel like it's still mostly a pullback in terms of trying to latch onto it. I'm not really feeling confident about that just yet. On the other side, you have AUD and Euro, doing better as well in today's session. AUD enjoying support from China with the government there. Central Bank, they're trying to provide more and more support, fairly in Shanghai now for businesses based on the lockdown. So there's also that supporting the Australian dollar. Why? Because China and China is Australia's biggest trading partner. So whenever anything that happens with China, clearly it affects Australia as well, and by extension, its currency. On the euro side, definitely the better, climate over the talks that helps the euro as well. Apart from that, you also have, on the other hand, you also have the USD CHF pressured across, the market space. Safe haven currencies down in a positive environment, which is not really a surprise. Equities generally, yes, they hold on to positives, but one thing I want to also clarify is the positives that we have so far are not really, really glaring, really. You still have mostly choppy, small moves, ranges, generally across board. And the fact that we have a positive tilt. Yes, it could increase later, but it just tells you that there's more and more calls for caution, especially the fact that we're heading into month and quarter end. It's all that, a little bit of caution, really, really, to still hold out for, into the session. Leaving that out, look at oil prices as well. Yes, the pullback from the lows, but there's been more and more reasons for, short-term downside, right, in terms of oil prices. And the reason has been, the more and more you see European nations saying that we can't really sanction Russian oil, ban Russian oil. Clearly, that obviously puts, hopes for more Russian oil in the market, calls from places like Arab saying that you can't really just take out Russia's supply as well. That also calls for, Russian supply also coming back into market, being into the fray. That's also a good development with progress in the talks as well. Also a good development. All of those things clearly have seen, oil prices push lower, right? You look at the US oil trading around $105 per barrel level currently. The VIX is down. Bonds are also pressured as well in the session. You look at the dollar index also lower in the day. Generally, overall, you have JPY AUD doing better in today's session. Euro also doing better. On the weaker side, you have the USD and you have the CHF pressured. But generally, you look at this back and forth flows that we have. It just says, yes, we have a tilt positive, but in terms of convictions, it's really, really low right now. And I think the market participants should also have that at the back of their mind in terms of trading. Let's look at generally what we have in terms of the space. Now, you look at, let's start from the equity space. Generally, you're seeing that up push in the equity space. This is on the Asian side. There's the Australia AUS 200. You're seeing it pushing higher into this session, right? up as well. You look at the German 40 also pushing up in today's session as well, just like we started yesterday's session. Now you look at yesterday, it ended up coming down as well. So the fact that we're starting positive today hasn't really given me so much confidence. And you look at kinds of big swings ups and downs that we have so far. It's just making me a little bit more patient with the kind of moves that we're seeing so far. Look at the FTSE as well. Excuse me. Look at the FTSE as well, also pushing higher into the session. But the reason why I'm not really, trying to latch onto these positives right now is we started similar yesterday, and it wasn't long we had our flush to the downside. So because there's not really a particular catalyst heading into yesterday's highs, I'm really being a little bit more patient in trying to jump into what I'm seeing right now. I think, this week is going to be a very, very, very tricky one to trade. I think we need to be very, very cautious as we approach markets in this week. You look at the likes of, JPN as well, also showing this is even worse because you even have more of choppy movement. Because over to the FX side, the US side, today's session, they're mostly flat. Although they're keeping on to yesterday's gains. Let's just see how we can drop this down a bit. Let's see how we can do it now. So this session, you look at today's session, trading mostly flat, right, for the day. Nothing really major going on right now. But yesterday, still holding on to the gains from yesterday's session, which is also one to pay attention to. You look at the other US bosses as well, similar story there. Messy yesterday, today, not really doing so much. So in as much as, yes, we have that tilt positive, I'm not really, really convinced, about the moves that we have so far. You look at the VIX, yes, pushing lower, right, in line with the positive environment that we have, right, clearly, and that has been the trend that we've seen for a while now. Nothing has really changed this. It could continue low as well. The bond side as well, still pressured as well into this session, also pointing to a more positive environment that we have in the day. The dollar index has been lower today, following yesterday's session as well. Right, we talked about the dollar index, the dollar from last week, where we said that, on the radio show, we said that dollar index or the dollar, yes, should see some weakness going into, last week. And then, yes, we had some back and forth with the dollar fell against the euro, but generally it came down against most of the other currencies that we like upside on, AUD, NZ, CAD, right? That said, now in today's session, what we've seen here is it has come back towards its previous highs, going back to the 22nd of March, tested again 23rd, 24th. I mean, more or less the highs of most of last week. Now, you also have it come back to retest this level as support. Could we see some upside from here? Why not? On the back of generally, you look at the dollar, the bias around the USD, it's clearly still very strong based on the Federal Reserve stance, trying to be more hawkish and tighten even faster. Because markets have priced in so much of positives, nothing says you can't see a little bit of pullback in the dollar as well. So there's really that imbalance, or let's say that, two sides of the coin where there are positive factors, but there's also reasons for immediate downside. So that keeps me a little bit more cautious with assets like the USD, generally in today's session. Now, on the balance, you look at, JPY, for example, right? Yes, being one of the strong currencies in today's session, but in terms of convictions, I'm not really, really excited about this. One thing I want to point to our minds is, we talked about the British pound yesterday. And the reason why I'm looking at the British pound is currently there's been a little bit of negativity from the BOE, right, on the back of the downside to the UK economy in terms of the job side, in terms of growth side, in terms of inflation, super high inflation as well. And that obviously, tilts or gives that slight pivot, that slight change in the stance of the BOE, where they're moving back to the more cautious on certain side. Now, that's not good for the British pound. And I like it because, you look at it against the likes of the Australian dollar, the likes of the New Zealand dollar, the pound has been falling heavily, right? But I want to pay attention to the pound against the likes of, the euro on a more weekly bias, right? For today's session, yes, you can look at strength and weaknesses, yes, but convictions are a little bit low. I'm more interested on this particular pair for the week. And the reason why I like this one is as more and more positives keep coming up on the Europe side in terms of the data side. I mean, in terms of the tension side, in terms of the negotiation side, that obviously bodes well for the euro economy, right? And on the UK side, clearly because of the whole back and forth with the BOE negativity, negative talk as well, that obviously is, badly for the British pound. So I would like to see further upside on this pair. And you look at how we've been trading recently, and we've bounced up this key support trend line going up. We've cleared out this previous support level as well, going back to, I think this was 14th of March, tested a couple of times. Now we're back above this level. We tested it at the start of the session and we're pushing high. If you can clear out this overall 0.84, right, this might not really be necessary for today's session, but if you can clear out this 0.84, I'd like to see further pushes higher. We have a couple of targets in our faces. We have one around 0.8415. We have ultimate one up here around 0.845. I like this levels in terms of for the upside on this particular pair. We could get pushes higher from here. If we clear out this one, it will be interesting. Or we get pulled back towards this key support level, or even better still towards the highs of 25th of March, maybe even deeper towards this, hourly moving average 50 here. But I like to see further upside on this particular pair, going forward. But apart from that, in terms of short-term catalyst, I'm being more careful, more patient, more cautious in terms of the moves that I'm looking to take. On the calendar, it's still another light one in today's session. Right? Yeah, nothing so much going on in today's session. Yes, we had retail sales for Australia, but that wasn't really anything too strong. Yeah, it's helped the AUD up a bit. Yes, positive, yeah, and the AUD is strong to the session, but it's not really been a major driver so far. Later in the day, we're expecting consumer confidence for the US and Joe's report, but apart from that, nothing really tangible on the calendar. I think for the day, markets are really paying attention to we have month and quarter inflows, and then it's really difficult to take a major stance before any of those major events, any of those major time of the year. So clearly there's that. There's still a lot of moving parts. There's still a lot of indecision here and there in the market. And I think that for traders, we should be more patient, more cautious about things that we see, instead of looking to just jump into low quality or feeble moves so far into this session. So we're going to leave that at this point. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to ask, and we'll always do our best to help. Thank you. Do enjoy the rest of the trading session. Bye for now.